It's Pyram King. I'm super, super excited to do another interview about Curse of Strahd and to talk about Dungeons and Dragons in general. And I have a really special guest here. You probably already know who it is. It's the Dungeon Coach. Hey, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me on, Pyre Man. It's been awesome. You are a huge beacon of darkness and of Curse of Strahd. I was going to say beacon of light, but then I feel like that's just a little off. So you've helped me in my Curse of Strahd game, so I hope I can help you guys with your Curse of Strahd games and just all come together. This Curse of Strahd community is wild, so love it.
I'm really excited about this because, just as full disclosure, I am a Patreon supporter. But one of the things that
As am I of yours.
I'm really excited about is the upcoming DC20. So why don't you share with us a little bit about how you got into role playing games, what Dungeon Coach is all about, and what I'm really excited about is DC20.
Cool, yeah. I got into role-playing games. I was a video gamer, hardcore gamer nerd, lots all over the place with video games until like later in life. I did not come up in high school playing D&D and all this stuff and gone through all the different iterations and 3.5s and stuff. All I knew was 5th edition, and I was like, this is crazy. The rules, or I guess in comparison to video games, the lack of rules or the openness of rules was crazy that you could truly do anything. And I walked up to a table of like a bunch of nerds. I also see myself as a nerd, but I was like, "What's going on here? D&D?" And then they're like, "Yeah, I'm gonna grab this guy and throw him over the waterfall." I'm like, "Wait, what? You can do anything you want?" And I was mind blown and have never looked back. The role play of it, my theater background, all of these different things come into just this. This is the perfect game for me, and I have never looked back since. So love role play games, and my whole I think because I'm not. I'm unique to some of the other people out there that have done this for so long that have other YouTube channels and that I haven't done it for forever. And I'm very open-minded when it comes to the game and the approach and the rules of the book that I published, which my whole goal with everything is to try and provide options and rules and ways you can tweak your game. That's what Alkander's Almanac was, which is now turned into the DC20 that you mentioned of an entire new rule set system to kind of fix some of the things that I feel like could be improved upon in 5th edition. I am still currently playing 5th edition Curse of Strahd, obviously. And I will say in DC20, I've already talked. I'm for sure going to be bringing you in on and talk to you about a little bit of converting Curse of Strahd to DC20, and you're for sure going to be a part of that.
Yeah,
So,
I'm excited
but
about
yeah,
that.
it's that's been the new goal of just trying to get people, whether you play D&D and D and you want to change and modify your D&D game, or you want to have a whole new game system that is, customizable as well. That's kind of my overall goal and mission of everything. So, there's
Well,
the spiel.
I know we want to jump into Curse of Strahd questions. That's what the interview is about. But there's one thing
Mhm.
that's really got me excited because it's something that comes up a lot when I get questions about Curse of Strahd. People wanting to run higher level areas or whatever. It's about increasing the hit points or how do I handle this.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I really, really like about DC20 is how you're attacking that action economy with that four action. Can you just briefly give us a synopsis of that four
Yeah.
action economy and reactions, how that works?
So the short and simple of it, I do have a full video to explain if this is not enough. You're like, oh, that's interesting. You want to hear more. But basically, if anyone's familiar with Pathfinder, they have 3 action points and then 1 reaction. The simplest way I could describe it is that I've just combined that together into 4 action points, which I think is a lot smoother than 1 action that you can use for a certain amount of things, and then 1 bonus action that you can use or not use depending on if you have it. But then it's this floating bonus action, and then the same thing with a reaction, and then also a pool of movement that you either use or not. So for a newbie, and I've play tested this with brand new people who've never played tabletop roleplay games before, it was very simple. 4 action points. What do you want to do? Cool. So when you said reactions, and the coolest part about that for me, I think, is you have 4 action points, and let's say the combat starts, you're right next to your allies, and a monster comes up and tries to hit them, and you're a fighter that chose a protector features and all this other stuff, and you've customized your character in that way. There is a reaction for that person to be able to reach your shield over and help and block your ally. Boom, you spend a reaction point. Cool. And then let's say that creature turns and runs away. Opportunity attack. Sure, you could spend an action. Cool. So there's things you can do off your turn to keep you engaged, keep you always be able to live and breathe. Counter, not counter spells, spell duels and stuff. That's a whole thing. But then let's say you protected your ally and you made that attack, and now your turn comes up. you only have two action points. You
Right.
spend your turn, and then and then your turn's over, and then boop, your points are back, and you rinse and repeat. So you can actually have your turn spread across a round and work in combos with allies, lots of other things. Or you can just keep your action points, and you don't want to build a character that's like that and has all these reaction things. Monks have a lot of cool reaction things, but if you don't do anything, then you still have your four action points, and it's very easy to balance as far as action economy because there is only one action economy instead of did they use a bonus action, did they use a reaction, did they use all their movement. Instead, it's a much cleaner, I think.
I,
So
I I really like it, and I was thinking, kind of extrapolating off of that idea, is in a DC20 version of Curse of Strahd, when you're dealing with someone like Strahd or Baba Lysaga, rather than
oh,
having legendary
mhm,
actions or layer actions,
mhm.
instead of four action points, maybe they have six action points.
Right, right,
Right.
right,
So that
right,
makes
right.
them kind of legendary because they have more action points to be able to do these
Hmm.
things. So I think it's just a
Yeah,
simple plug and play system. Really
right.
excited about it. So
Well,
uh,
and one of the people within my team that were trying to like, oh, what about this? What about this? What about this? The thing we found out is like actually, if you run this DC20 system of four action points, every monster is kind of like a legendary monster or can
that's
easily
right.
become one. You could have a goblin captain have five action points and give him one ability to use it, use some stuff off his turn, and then it feels more back and forth and it feels more epic because you've just adjusted that. So I
Yeah.
100% agree.
I'm really excited to get this done, and
Thanks, man.
I heard you had a really successful time at GaryCon with playtesting this.
Oh yeah, it was a intense gauntlet of polishing it off to get the classes ready and all these things ready to make sure it was good to go. Because I've played it, been working on it for years, but it's been like with friends and little things here and there. It's super casual, but I really wanted to deliver a full playtest experience, and it went phenomenal. It went amazing. The feedback was awesome. So for sure.
I'm really excited about it. So let's jump into some Curse of Strahd questions. First of
Yes, that's
all,
what we're here for,
I
man.
know. So, what led you to pick up out of all the campaigns out there? Why did you pick
Oh
Curse of Strahd?
yeah.
What was the
Why Curse
impetus
of
for that?
Strahd? So I have never ran a module in my life. That's all.
Really?
I've only done homebrew. I'm the homebrew guy. I love homebrew. I did my first camp. I wouldn't recommend this, but my first ever campaign as a new dungeon master was a homebrew campaign world from scratch. Lasted 3 years long, like all the
Wow.
whole thing. So, wow, that was not would not recommend. I would say it's better to learn through a different scaffolding system, but that's all I've done. And then I did another, my second campaign was based off the characters' backstories, and then it was all so any campaign I've ever done has always been some one shots homebrew. Anything has always been homebrew, and I was like, I gotta run a module because it's just I want to eventually make my own modules and publish adventures and stuff. And I felt like that was, I publish a lot of things, and adventures is something I really want to make sure I do right and do well because I think it's very helpful for people, especially starting out. So I was like, what better one to do than Curse of Strahd? It was honestly between Curse of Strahd, Icewind Dale, and Wild Beyond the Witchlight and Waterdeep Dragon Heist were the four that I was really kind of going around with. But talking with my group, I was like, I mean, Curse of Strahd, I mean, it's kind of iconic. How can we not? So,
Epic
and then
Gothic.
so amazing. It's been so amazing, so wonderful. I have learned so much through just the process of running a module so that I can go homebrew and do my own thing after this or run another module. It's just, it's gone so much better than I ever would have thought. So I love it.
Well,
Love it.
as you know, I'm living in Portugal in a very small town, so my only experience is playing online through virtual tabletop
Hmm.
system
Hmm.
Foundry. But you're playing Curse of Strahd in person. So tell
Yeah,
us a little
for
bit
sure.
about playing in person and preparing for
Yeah.
that. And how many people do you have playing, and a little bit
Right.
about your players.
The logistics. So I have five players. That, in my opinion, is the sweet spot of players. I don't know. I really like five. It's uneven, so they can't have a tied vote if they ever have to
Oh yeah.
decide on stuff. If they split the party, there's a 3-2 split, so that's always interesting. Who has the three? Who has the two? So I really do love five, and they are in person. We play every week, so that's another thing as far as the logistics of all that. But we all live decently close together, and it's always, that we always come over here. It is quite, this is my office, and then I have to relocate, move a bunch of stuff to the area to be able to play in. It's way too small to play in here. So hopefully I can maybe fix that in the future. But I printed off all the Curse of Strahd maps, every single one of them. I have a vinyl print off map of every single map. Like literally they're right here. So all the maps are organized, coded, labeled. This is the Abbey of St. Markova. All here, anything having to do with that. All the towns are all pre-bound and
Wow.
put together. So there's that. I got the Curse of Strahd minis. I have a variety of minis in
I,
general,
I'm
and
super
then I
envious. Super envious.
um, and then I scan through of like, what do I have missing? What do I not have, et cetera, et cetera. And then fill in the gaps and patch it up from there. So yeah.
So this is
Uh,
your first one. Are you playing Curse of Strahd rules as written, or are you including some third-party fan content or injecting some of your own content?
um, I honestly did my best to, you know what? I'm just going to run the module. Just pure and just run the module, see what it's like. But I'm telling you, Pyram, as soon as I started going, I was like, actually, you know what? This plot point doesn't make. What if this was? That's too simple. What happened there? Curse, all the different stuff we had when it has to do with Strahd's background and the things with his brother and his mother and all these different things going on. I was like, you know what? There's more here. I could add, and I have spent too much time now diving into my own iteration of the story and the motivations of Strahd, and that's a whole. I mean, that's a probably an entire video that we could do. We'll do a collaboration on my channel, just talk about that or something. I don't know, but I definitely have taken it in my own direction, and then I've also Mandy Mod, Dragna Carta, Lunch Break Heroes, great resources, and then there's some other guy. There's one other guy that's I think a good resource, but I forget his name. Starts with a P. Um,
I don't know. I don't know who that could be.
You, dude, huge resource and boon to my game. That I have a whole process, and we can talk about the process like as far as preparation stuff later. But definitely, I soak in what the message of what Curse of Strahd was, the initial intent, and then I bring in all these awesome content creators like yourself to kind of see what y'all's interpretation's been, and then I take a huge step back and think before any because I purposely had my own plots and stories with Strahd before reading anything, and I have this vision of what I want that I soak in the book, I soak in the other stuff, and then I try and put my own tweaks and spins on it to make it fit into my version of the world, as I hope everyone else does, and hopefully I can be another one of those names added to that list of those awesome content creators that I can try and help people create their own world because it just makes so much sense. Like Strahd makes so much sense. His motivations make so much more sense now, running him and understanding who he is and role playing him and all that stuff. So yeah, definitely have a process of trying to soak in as much as I can because it's only going to get better. Like even if I
Right.
just use Curse of Strahd and your stuff only, you
Right.
only improve it.
Well,
Every person you add on is just going to make it better.
let's delve into that for a second because my experience was first in 1983 or 84. I played Ravenloft, and then I came back to run it as Curse of Strahd. And one of the things I
Mhm.
noticed, and you probably noticed in the book too, because you actually stated this, is as you're reading through it, it seems like there's so many plot holes, even location holes. And I couldn't
Yeah,
help
yeah.
wonder
Wait,
if
what?
Chris
Yeah,
Perkins and Wizards of the Coast said, hey, you know what? We're just going to leave some of this open ended for those creative dungeon
right.
masters to fill in their own story because
Yeah.
there's so many wonderful uh, third party content out there
Mhm.
and so many wonderful campaigns. They're all different. I wonder if this was, do you think it was an intention by Chris Perkins and Wizards of the Coast to kind of leave it
Oh,
open a lot?
interesting. Interesting. I don't know. I mean, I think that's a very hopeful, giving them a lot of credit for that. But I do think it's just a lot. I can only imagine like we produce content. You know the kind of what it's like to do that at the level that they do it. I think it's a lot to be able to have to do, and I feel like there's diminishing returns towards time put into something. So I
Right,
almost feel like it's like we got Ravenloft, we have this, we're gonna make an update. Okay, cool. Oh, there's some weird parts, but it would be better time spent of us to go invest and do other things and create something like Fizban's Dragon, Golden Vault, and all these different things
right,
instead of like let's really and kind of just leave it to us to then take up and the phase spin that you've put on your version of the
right.
world is awesome, wild, cool, and might not have happened if there hadn't been those gaps like you're saying. So I think it's a beautiful balance, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I tell first time DMs when they come to Curse of Strahd that it's probably and I don't have a huge experience across a broad set of adventures or modules, but this particular one has. I think it's leaves so many questions to run it. Just rules as written that you could be in a DM position where a player goes, okay, why? And you're going to go, oh wait, I don't know why.
Yeah. Right. Which is my
So
biggest concern with a module is
right,
that I don't have all the answers because they're
right.
kind of our answers. So that was the most intimidating thing for me with the modules. I am the world and I made the world and I can answer the world. So yeah, but this is a little different.
Now, moving to the next questions. So you've created this dungeon coach world that
Version.
incorporates some fan based content stuff using the foundation of Curse of Strahd, some Ravenloft stuff. Have you incorporated any Dungeon Master variant rules, or maybe some of your own DC20
Oh, for
rules
sure.
into the
For sure.
campaign? And how did you
Well,
incorporate
yeah.
those?
So interesting point. I'll say the DC20 rules thing first because just popped in my head. I never realized that the connection there. One thing, and this is something that my team is working on the D&D version to publish for D&D people, which does give insight into this action point system, but for monsters. So what I've done is I basically have eliminated the bonus action from monsters, and
Oh,
monsters have 4 action points kind of like if you have a multi-attack monster or whatever. So and you can also scale it down to however many. Sometimes a skeleton just has 2, sometimes a whatever, right? So in general, monsters, kind of how I've ran them, have action points. I did the hag fight. There was a hag fight, 2 hags at the old bone grinder windmill.
right.
The hags had action points, etc. Now I still do structure it like D&D where they have legendary actions and layer actions and all that kind of stuff. I do compartmentalize it like that as well. But one thing I've done with monsters that I think is a very smooth way of doing things is just the action points. So a monster might have 3 action points, and if it wants to do some big bad scary thing, it costs 2, and they can still make an attack. Whatever, right? If they have some sort of eye
So
gaze, just thing, cool, 2 action points. If some sort of monster has a breath weapon, okay, maybe that's 3 action points. I don't know, right? So it helps me be able to fluidly balance monsters and be able to do what I want with them in that regard. Now, they do still have a base movement speed as well, so they do that. So it's still very much D&D, but I think that is a DC20 inspired situation there. And then as far as like actual homebrew rules of my own that I've added in for the vibe of Curse of Strahd, there's plenty of things that I just do. It's how I dungeon master, and that would be a much longer answer to a question. But death saves for sure have to be modified in Curse of Strahd. I feel like I don't think you could run Curse of Strahd with rules of written death saves. I would. I think that's. I'm very against the normal death saves.
right.
I have a lot that I could talk about that. But anyway, if you go down, if you get knocked unconscious, stack of exhaustion instantly. As soon as you get knocked unconscious, you have a stack of exhaustion. I've also homebrewed exhaustion because exhaustion's too much in D&D. It's so
Yeah,
punishing.
it is. I
No one
agree
ever gives it
100%.
out. Like it's so punishing per stack that no one ever gives it out, and it's
It
so
doesn't
punishing
it
to
doesn't make sense either. Like
yeah.
why do you have
And then you
why are you rolling disadvantage on some kind of save over here because you're exhausted?
right. And then it's movement, and then it's back to saves, and then it's movement. So there's no way you could list off even to remember it. So my version of exhaustion, which I do have a whole video explaining it further, but is you -1 every stack of exhaustion. That's it.
Oh, that's
So
easy.
it's a
That's
minus
easy.
one, -1 to any D20 roll you roll. You
Is
just
that
are a
is
little bit
that
worse at everything you do.
you're incorporating that into DC20 as well, right?
That is the exhaustion system of DC20. True. That is very true. Yes. There is a simple exhaustion, which is just you have -1 for each stack of exhaustion. You have 3 stacks of exhaustion, -3 to everything you do. Super simple and
Right.
not wildly punishing. So it's I can give it out more and not feel too bad about absolutely snowball killing them all. Right.
Right.
TPK immediately as soon as exhaustion starts going out. So that's one thing. Also, death saves do not reset until a long rest. Your failures don't reset until a long
Oh
rest.
wow. Wow.
So if you get a failure, okay, like you better, you gotta, like you're a
Wow.
little closer to death, right? So, and I've always done that since the beginning. That's what the homer I've
I
had.
I
I have
I
that in every game I ever
I
run.
really like that idea. It was always frustrating. I was playing in a game where that
Hmm.
actually came up, and we had 2 back-to-back really deadly combats. One of
Yeah.
our guys went down. I mean, he was just about ready to die. Then, oh, he saved and he popped up.
Bloop.
And
And
then we
then
go
you're
right
there.
into another combat, and he does the same thing. It's like
Right.
I would
Right.
think,
Mm-mm.
it kind of breaks this verisimilitude. You know what I mean? It's like that guy has been
Especially in this campaign,
crap
for
beaten out of
sure.
him. He should not be just
Mm-hmm.
popping up and
Mm-hmm.
going
Yeah, yeah,
toe to
yeah,
toe. No,
for
that's a
sure.
great idea. So long rest
I
resets
love
the
that.
failed death saves.
That's the only way to reset them. Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
right.
Yep. Yep.
Very, very
And
cool.
then I have also, this is the first time I've ever done this because it's tedious and it's annoying and all that kind of stuff. But I am tracking it across the entire campaign is food rations. I know that's not like the
You know
fanciest
what?
thing in the world,
I think
but
that's a great idea. That's something.
yeah.
I used to play D&D back in the '80s, and we
Mhm.
did hex crawls. And I
Yeah.
remember everything was we kept very close track. Like we only could carry so much on our body, and then everything had to go in a
Hmm.
sack,
Yep.
and we would have to remove
Encumbrance as well.
something.
Yep. Hmm.
So encumbrance and traveling and food was something we used to track. And since I played 5e in several games I played, nobody even it's like, oh yeah, you
At
have
all. Right. Right. Right.
lammas bread right
You
from
just, I
Lord of
have
the
five
Rings.
weapons on my back. I have five weapons on my back and an infinite supply of
Yeah.
a bag of holding food. Yeah, yeah,
What do
for
you
sure.
mean
So
8 crossbows? I can hold 8 crossbows, right?
two-handed weapons. Yeah, it's so bad. But with Curse of Strahd, I was like, food. I think I want to target the food. I'm not really doing encumbrance as much now. I have oh, that's too much. Or if they're carrying something big, we might have to talk about it. But I haven't really cracked down on that. But I have loved cracking down on gold and food. And the interconnectedness of that, and it just came in session 11. We had session 11 2 days ago. We play on Sundays, but it really hit whenever they're looking around. They're like, we don't have much gold. Like, how much gold do you have? And they had, like the richest person in the party has like 8 gold, and they're like,
That's
okay,
awesome.
so, man, and some people have no gold, and their rations are getting low, and I'm like, and then they took a step back and they self-realized we haven't done anything to gain resources. We've just spent and spent and spent and spent. And they
Yeah.
were not like, what can we do in the town? So the paladin picked up some chores and tasks of Milavage.
Right.
Milavage in the church, the cemetery worker.
Right.
The paladin, he's missing now, and he's in the orphanage and all sick from his soul getting whatever that little plot line. So the paladin is stepping in Milavage's job, and he's doing Milavage's job to earn money and trying to make some money to be able to have the group because he also wants to buy armor, but then he can't buy armor because it's so expensive. So it's really cool to see them worry about gold
Right.
and then be down in the dumps with it and food every day. Now, I have it set for food where it's one meal of food a day. It's one thing of rations a day, and that represents you have eaten some points spread across a day. You've eaten enough to be able to be okay. It's
Well,
not like smash your face in one moment.
what happens if they don't eat? Is it
So if you
exhaustion?
it happens at long rests. So at some point during a 24-hour period, you have to consume a ration within a 24-hour period. You know what I'm saying? And that
Right.
happens usually during a long rest. If you don't, you Constitution saving throw for exhaustion every long rest is tacked on to the end of every
Okay.
long rest. So if you're fed and you're good to go and you're fine, then it's you take your long rest. But if you have not eaten enough and you have not hit that threshold of food, Constitution saving throw, DC 10 at first, if 2 days without food, DC 15, DC 20, and it keeps going up by fives, which is also kind of a DC 20 thing. That's a by fives thing. But yeah, that's been the food thing. No, only about 2 or 3 times have they ever not or whatever, and that was mainly whenever one of the players got arrested in Vallaki, and they've been
Uh-oh.
eating prison food, which yeah. So yeah, that's
Grubs.
that's
Here's some
yeah, yeah,
grubs and
yeah.
some hardtack. Enjoy.
Right, yeah. So I'm like, and this is going to be a exhaustion roll for this. But again, exhaustion, not crazy
Yeah.
bad.
No.
So it still is not like I'm just smashing them in
I
the ground
mean,
with
I
these
guess I
food
guess
rules.
what is D20? That's what everyone is 5%, right? So you're giving up a
Exactly, yeah.
5% probability of accomplishing your task. So one of the things that you've been doing, which I've been watching, I'm ignorant, is it? I don't know if it's only for Patreon members, but you're doing your session prep videos. Is that only for
Oh
Patreon
yeah.
members,
So I've
or is
done
that
some
available to the
session prep.
public?
That was public. I did some session prep videos for public on the live streams of my channel. The thumbnails are very much Curse of Strahd, obvious. But I do some game prep stuff. I prepped Vallaki. I prepped some of the castle. I prep the old bone grinder, all that kind of stuff. I've done a lot of prep on there, and I show kind of my thought process and like a little bit of more in-depth structure of how that's done. The thing that's patrons only is my live games. I record my
Right.
actual home games live,
Right.
and that's a patron only thing. Everything
So,
else
so
is
the session
public.
prep, if somebody watching, I'll put links to all this in the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
description down below. But if somebody wants to watch some of your session preps, so it's available for to the public for free,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, baby.
So,
And I also have a second channel, Dungeon Coach Plays, where I
right.
post weekly updates of my Curse of Strahd behind the scenes from a Dungeon Master perspective, give kind of a play-by-play and some moves that I made and changes that I had to do on the fly, and give like a little behind the scenes breakdown of each episode. So,
So let's talk about your session prep. And this is probably the
mhm.
question I get a lot from so many people. I've broken my particular guides into what I call kind of areas or theme based areas. Like, there's the village of
Mhm.
Vallaki or some certain locations within Vallaki or the bone
Right.
grinder. So that you can kind of zero into an area, kind of really focus on the area where your players are going to be at least for one session, maybe a couple of sessions.
Mhm.
Can you tell us how you go through this process? I know I think you follow Sly Flourish's notation system, right? You use
I'm
notation,
familiar with his like 10-step system. I'm definitely
but you
familiar with
use
his 10-step
notation too,
system.
right?
Oh, Notion?
Notion. I keep
Oh
on
yeah,
saying
yeah,
notation.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I know
Oh,
he uses
Notion.
Notion as well.
Notion is I'm writing DC20 in Notion. My Dungeon Master binders in Notion. Everything I do is in Notion. So yeah,
And Sly Flourish has a template for Notion. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not know that. No, I did not
Yeah,
know
yeah.
that.
I
No,
downloaded that. I'll put a
no,
link
for
down
sure.
that below. It's just
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
simple template that he likes to use in Notion to do session preps.
Right, right, right.
Can I ask you for a favor? Can you show
Yeah, yeah.
us everybody your
Oh yeah,
Notion?
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. So I have it up right here. Switcheroo. Oh, nice.
Oh, cool.
So this is my. You see the little bat? See that little cute little bat?
Yeah,
Okay.
cool.
But yeah, so this is my binder. This is where all the kind of like my Dungeon Master binder for like things that they've left behind, like untied off plot threads, other stuff like that. The world, my whole Strahd backstory situation, different ways to travel, the player character stories, all that stuff. But this is the meat and potatoes of everything, where the campaign tracker of all the previous sessions that I have. Vallaki, which is what they're currently in right now, Castle Ravenloft, which they may or may not go to next, etc. So all the recent things, but the big picture is the campaign overview, which is every single thing in the entire book of
Wow.
Curse of Strahd all in one thing right here. And each of these, when you open it up, is runnable. And that my whole goal with this is like I wanted to like whenever I prep. Now, I'm gonna heavily tell regular people not to do this. And when I say regular, if you don't plan on publishing this professionally and going through things to be able to make something that you can hand off to somebody else and have them run right off the bat, then you should not do this. Which is also why I've tried to do it for people. Just like you have these beautiful PDFs that you walk through and paint the picture so much better. In a side little rant here to hype you up some is when I read the prep process I talked about, I read through the Curse of Strahd book. There's so many times where I'm like, wait, who is this person? Oh, and it's explained and like it's kind of it's all over the place in that like it says something and mentions a person and I'm like, who is this person? I've never. Oh, it's this. Okay, and then it kind of makes sense. But whenever I read through yours, it's very much like, here's what you need to know about this, and then here's actually some possible things that they could talk about. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is how it should be. So
Yeah, the
you do
book
such a great
Curse of
job.
Strahd is jumps. I mean, I just think it's in my personal opinion horribly organized. Curse of Strahd, the castle's chapter 4, and then you have to go to the last chapter
Oh
to the
right,
wolf den, and you're like,
yeah, yeah.
no
Wait,
rhyme or
you're
reason to the
I could
organization in
never
that book.
imagine putting the book in front of me and running it. There's no way. There's no way. So, which
Right.
is now back to answer your question. So, like in each of these, like the old Savalich roads. Okay, cool. There's a thing. There's a tree. Some flavor text. Green is always flavor text. Yellow is eye catching things for me. Purple is character said things. Blue are secrets that I don't want to say to anybody else. And then there's a little zombie bear encounter that they encounter on the road. Boom, it's gone. And then they go here, and there's the village of Barovia. You open up the village of Barovia, it's an entire another page with all of the each of the towns and the specific spots of the church and the
Wow.
cemetery, all that
Wow.
stuff. And then the town of Vallaki, which is where they're at now. here is all the different places in Vallaki, the Burgermaster Mansion, Watcher House, Blink's Toys, Vistani Camp. So if you go to the Blue Water Inn, here's the Blue Water Inn, and then there's each of the spots where you can go in the Blue Water Inn, the map to the blue, all the NPCs that you could ever talk to in the Blue Water Inn are all right here, all with drop downs of different things that they have going on. If they have a quest, the little quest right there as well, all that. So yeah,
Awesome.
it's all, but I tried to make it to where you could be like, oh, they go to the stables. Oh, there's the stables. This is what's in the stables. And there's,
Keeping it very
it's
succinct, only the important stuff in there.
right. So that's kind of what I try and have in front of me to where I can use it as much or as little as I need. And
Now,
in the process of reading through everything, I think you can just wing it from there. But if there's ever spots where you're like, ooh, at least this kind of helps hold you up and help you from
now, are
falling or
you
scrambling.
using Notion on a laptop while you're playing in person, or
Yeah.
do you have a tablet?
So
Or
that's actually a great question. My setup is Dungeon Master Binder on my middle and right, kind of spans across that whole way. I have my dice in the right hand corner. I could talk much more about what's on behind the Dungeon Master screen as far as NPCs and other little rules and secret things and all that stuff. And then right next to that is my iPad propped up, and my iPad is what I run current. So this what I just showed y'all is the town of Vallaki, and that's on my laptop, which is on the far left. I have my laptop with a
right?
side by side screen on, and I have all the different stuff that I need for like big picture stuff. But then on my iPad, I have next session, which is like the specific session stuff that I'm working out right now of the different things I have that are kind of going in front of me, different scenes I have that I can organize and look in and have, oh, this is they met Isaac and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah,
So,
I try and that's the whole setup.
one of the things that I've had this question asked to me before, and it's kind of how I've run it because I know how crazy a massive
Yeah.
campaign. My campaign was 18 months, 65 sessions. So
Oh, that's actually great to know
yeah, 18
because I've
months,
always wondered
65
that.
sessions.
How long do you play a session? How long are your sessions?
We played once a week, 4 hours on average. We had a couple of that ran
Okay.
six
Okay.
hours.
Yeah, yeah, that's good to know.
I would say from my anecdotal research, around 50 to 65, 70 sessions is about average in a span of about a year and a half to 2 years. Now,
Yeah.
my good friend Harrison, who is probably, by the way, Harrison's the moderator of the Curse of Strahd Discord, and he, I
Oh,
believe, ran the
great.
first full blown Curse of Strahd campaign in Foundry back when it was like Foundry version
Whoa,
4 or 5.
cool. Yeah.
But his campaign went for 3 years. He was running weekly.
I
I
could
think
see it, honestly.
140 or
Yeah.
50 sessions, and
I
he's
mean,
a
the world's
really good
great.
voice.
I
He
could
was
see it.
by the way, just a little side thing that's really really fun. I don't know if you could do this in
Mhm.
person, but he did this for me. Is he was a guest NPC in my campaign, so I'm playing online,
Oh,
and he
cool.
played the Lich in the Amber Temple. So he did all the voice acting and
Yeah.
role played the Lich, and also had another DM jump in and role played one of the vampire brides in the castle. So
Cool.
I had these guest NPCs jumping in, playing.
Yeah.
So it's kind
Oh,
of
that's
fun to do
great.
that.
Oh, that's awesome.
So
That's
let
so
me get
awesome.
back to the question. One of the
Yeah.
things that it's helped me is at the end of the session, I always ask the players, "What is your expectation, or what do you plan to do the next session?" Because, for instance, Vlaki's a big place; they could go friggin' anywhere.
Anywhere, right.
How do you handle that? So you're focusing on where your players may be going in the next session.
So Vallaki has been wild for my group. The 2 second version of Vallaki, then to answer your question, is they walked in. I also added a rule to Vallaki that you cannot openly cast magic unless you're within the church, and it's like with the father, and it's like that's the only place you can. Holy magic in the church is fine. Everywhere else, no. Because I did want to give across that they have so many rules. Like Vallaki has so many rules already that I was like, you know what? I really kind of want to, and I don't have a lot of magic casters in this group. I have a bard and a cleric, barbarian, rogue, paladin. So I,
Right.
I really wanted to kind of put that there. And a cleric, holy person. Okay, cool. I'm really trying to catch up the bard because the bard is a real centerpiece of this kind of thing. He's been targeted by Strahd. That's a whole nother situation. But he got arrested. He got arrested. You're not allowed to say Strahd's name. He said Strahd's name in public, telling a story about their adventures. Said Strahd's name. Strike one. Strike two was he did not say that he could cast magic. He lied about that at the check-in registration of the city. So that's strike two. And then he cast magic in public. It was a prestidigitation to clean up. His brother threw up on a patron. He prestidigitation, cleaned it up. Strike three, and then he gets arrested. So that's been a whole thing. And since he's arrested, then the split party splits even more to kind of like go in two different spots. So now I have three different splits, and it's been all crazy. So, but it's been so much fun, and I did check in with my players. Actually, it's funny you asked this question because last I was like, "How do you guys feel about the whole split thing?" Because I know that's not normal, and normally it's like together. But he's been arrested, and y'all are trying to figure this out, and they're trying to figure out where the bones are of the church, and all this kind of stuff's going on, right? So it's been cool to see where they go, and then I do at the end of everything be like, "So like, what is your character's plan right now? Like where like we have the bones, we have the Milavage, what's going on with him? We have like what's your priority list?" And then I kind of check in with them there, so I kind of know where they're going to go. But really, if I have this big dungeon master thing with I'm almost prepared for them to go anywhere, which isn't always the case, especially if you don't prep as much as overly prepped as I've been. So I think that's a little bit. I'm trying to devil's advocate myself of I have over prepped so much that I'm probably not as worried about that because they could go anywhere because I have all of these different things. And the last session went crazy because they just were going all over the place and went through multiple different places that I wouldn't have been prepared for, but because I had my whole thing, I was. So, but very much so to answer your question now, at the end of this last session, it was very crazy. The party is split, and one party has found the demon that's working on Melavage's soul, etc., and they're going to fight it with three instead of five. And then the other people were chasing after a Vasily, and who's with Irina. Vasily and Irina are together, and they're gone. And wait, where'd they go? And they're chasing after them. Yeah. So two of them are over here, and then they got caught, and then that ended the session. So I asked them what's going to go on, and the cleric said that they're going to fight to the death against this demon. I was like, oh my gosh. So yes, very much. I recommend talk to your players after, especially if they're in a spot where they could go anywhere. That is great advice to talk with them, check in, be like, all right, so where's your character at right now? Where's your head at? So that you can prepare. And I have now prepared an entire thing for this cleric to do a divine intervention channel of their god to try and exorcise a demon and pour all of his spell slots into one big moment. And there's a little homebrew mechanics for it. So we'll see what the next top of the session looks like, but it's going to be crazy because he's either going to exorcise the demon or die. So it's going to be crazy.
So you're talking about exorcism. So how you running an exorcism mechanic?
Yeah, the cleric has expressed heavy. So if you're familiar with, I think it was it who was the creator of the orphanage? I don't want to get that wrong.
It's
I think
Mandy Mod.
Mandy Mod. Okay, so Mandy Mod's orphanage, brilliant. It adds that extra layer to the bones because
Right.
guarantee you, if I did not have the orphanage in there, they would have already found the bones. They would have already found the bones, and then now the church would be back to good, and they would have that. And no. So it's been brilliant to have that little bit of a gap to where they couldn't just interrogate Milavage to then find out that oh they're here and then it's done. They have to go and they found this whole demon thing, and they really did a whole bunch of investigative research to find out where it's going. Use some clever uses of the paladin's divine sense to sense a fiendish presence, and then connect. Oh, there's also a fiendish presence here, and they put the two and two together. It was super cool. I just got nerd chills. But they get to this moment where they enter in the orphanage, and this like possessed boy is like staring at them, and they divine sense, and they go for it, and they figure out that it's him, etc. And we ended the session. And I was hopefully trying to have that be like a stop it. Do not take this fight. Do not take this fight. Like this because what happened, I had the paladin make a roll and they get knocked unconscious and their soul's starting to get kind of like in that same bruise type look. So the paladin's unconscious and it's just the two of them. And I was
Cliffhanger.
hoping I was left on a cliffhanger, but I was also hoping in a split party as a little dungeon master tip. If your party's split, I'm gonna run things off differently. If all five of them entered the house, I probably wouldn't have had the boy standing there staring ominously at them. I probably would have ran it off and I'd slow played it and let them. Oh, and then the fight happens, and then it's a full blown combat, very normal. With this, I was like, okay, I need to like stop it. go, shoo, 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 because
Right.
they shouldn't fight three versus this one thing that's been very strong demon situation. So I had this whole paladin situation. The paladin got knocked unconscious, and it's now just the two of them, and that's where we ended it. But I'm hoping that they're like, we got to get out of here, grab it and go. But let's let up is through talking to the players, like you're saying, the cleric now is like, I am going to exorcise this demon. I'm going to put my life on the line. If I die, I die. I cannot leave this orphanage with all these children with this demon. I have to fight it now. I'm like, oh my gosh. So what he's going to do is I did give him a homebrew mini version of divine intervention for the cleric. He's level 4, and I know you don't get divine intervention to level 10 or something, right? Um, but I gave him a mini version of Divine Intervention where you have to roll a D100 and it's your level. So I run it the opposite because I know you have to roll below your level, but that always felt weird that you want to roll low. So I flipped it to where Divine Intervention, you roll a D100 minus your level, and that's the DC. So 100 minus 4 is 96. So you have to roll a 96 or higher to get the Divine Intervention to hit, but it's also flavored as a mini divine intervention, partially from me granting to him early as a homebrew bonus perk. That it's something
All right.
I have multiple videos on bonus perks, but it's something that he really has been role playing, this connection to his god and reaching out to his god in these dark lands. And I've been very strict on him with magic and like his restricted of how he can be able to cast magic in these dark lands. But anyway. He's going to try and use divine intervention, and I added in a exorcism mechanic of you can spend spell slots and pour spell slots into this moment to decrease the DC down.
Oh, okay.
Um, so for every one spell slot that he spends, he's going to roll a D12, and it's going to drop the DC by that much more,
Well, that's a good
right?
idea.
So he could dump all of his spell slots into this moment to
Theoretically,
really
lower
drop
it
that
enough that
DC.
he could pass.
He could pass it, yeah. And then I've also implemented a second phase to that where if you pass it, again, this is a baby divine intervention. This is a level 4 divine intervention. So if you beat it, it's going to deal a huge amount of damage. It's going to wake his paladin's going to come conscious again. Huge, great stuff's going to happen. It's going to be a huge epic moment. But every 10 that you beat the DC by deals more and more damage to this
Oh, wow.
creature as it gets exercised. And it's to the point where if he lowers the DC high enough by pouring all of his spell slots into it to lower that DC from 96 down to whatever he can get it down to, and then he rolls the D100 and he rolls super high on it, he could potentially one-shot exercise
Dude,
this thing
this is giving
with
me
divine intervention.
some nerd chills because I can imagine you're spending those valuable spell slots trying to roll in
Yeah.
the 12, trying to
Hmm.
lower that DC, and then you got to go for that roll, right? You're going for that
Boom.
roll, and
Right, right, right.
you're
I
going to
just got
be,
chills too.
oh my god, you're just like I got to make this roll because if I don't make this
Right.
roll, I just burn all those spell slots.
And you are fake because I also said it's a touch. You have to touch him. So he is
Ugh.
going to be point blank. If this succeeds, great. That's
If it
going to be
doesn't,
amazing. If it doesn't, though, you have no spell slots. Are standing point blank at this demon with a party of 2. So
oh man.
you're screwed. You're screwed. So he's going to either die or it's going to be amazing. So, and he's fully fine with that. I've talked to him about that as well. Also, something is all my characters have backup characters that they've already made.
Okay.
Like we already talked about. I've put them in the world in different spots. They don't know where their characters are.
In my
Yeah.
campaign I ran, and it's in the free campaign guide, is the revenant option. So if your players die, they don't get resurrected. They come back as a
Yeah.
revenant, and they have to.
Oh,
So
yeah. That's
which
cool.
which we did. A quick
I
question
love
here.
it.
I'll tell you how I on Foundry split my party. So I ran quite a few split parties, and so if they're going to be split a little bit during the session, what I did was I created 2 different Discord channels. So I would have the private Discord channel, which I would
Oh, that's
pull up
beautiful for.
just
Mm-hmm.
just the ones that were going to be in there, and then the rest of them could
Right.
talk among themselves. And I had a little timer on my table, so you have to consciously be aware those people are waiting around. So
Right.
I ran mine for
Sure.
10 minutes max, and then I would jump back and forth. But
Yep.
then later in my campaign, my party split up for a couple of sessions, like 3 sessions. One was going
Yeah.
towards Yester Hill, one was going up towards the Amber Temple, and
Whoa,
so
whoa, whoa. They split actual events. Like they
yes.
were split.
So
Oh my
I think
gosh.
for 4 or 5 sessions, I ran back to back 2-hour sessions. So one group would
Uh-huh.
log in and we would play their
Yeah.
session for 2 hours, and then the other group would log in and play their session for 2 hours. So I was running two
Oh,
2 hour mini sessions.
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh
So
my
how do
gosh.
you
I'm
do
thinking,
this in person? Do they leave the
oh
room, or
man.
do you do that?
That's
Have
so
them?
cool. So okay. There are certain times where I have had people leave the room, or me and a player have left the room. Now that I'm filming it though, I don't want to like leave me and a player leave the room, and then now the people watching have no idea what's that. So I have had one time where Strahd was talking just to one person, and I had everybody else leave, and kicked them outside because it's just the way that my house is set up. They went outside on the patio. But I was talking just to this one Lars person, and basically Strahd offered him a deal and offered him a warlock pact to this warlock to, if you want to take me up on it, you can. So and then he left and whatever, and it was just a real nice gesture. That's such a nice guy, this
He's a nice
Strahd
guy.
is,
Strahd's a good
so
guy.
nice, so nice. Anyway, so but in general for split party stuff. Um, if I ever had to do it like what you're saying, to where they're going to different actual literal places, to where even if they wanted to come back together, it would be a lot of time to do that as
Yeah.
well. I would love to see in person. I would probably have it be like, all right, you guys come at 8 o'clock, you guys come at 10 o'clock, like, and then like
That's
physically
what I
have them
do.
like, that'd be super crazy. That would be an in physical version or physical version of that. But at the table, I love that your timer situation. You have a little timer and make sure you keep a pulse on that. So what I do, and it's also what I make sure I do in my session prep, is I had whenever the party was split to the guy in prison and the group that wasn't, I had scenes in prison with those. You kind of like I showed with
Right.
these yellow lines, right? Like these
Right.
yellow. So like in prison scenes, there we go. In prison scenes, yellow, yellow, yellow. Out of prison scenes, yellow, yellow, yellow. So that I know I have scenes for each pocket of people that I can make sure to bit bop around on and make sure to jump around. And I usually default to going around the table is kind of how I keep my own self honest with it, to make sure I'm like, okay, paladin, cleric, what are you guys doing with the bones? We're gonna do this, we're gonna do that with that. Okay, cool. Y'all two are perusing the streets and trying to talk about this. Where are y'all going? Okay, we're gonna go here, go here, go here. You're in prison. Here's and I still wanted to give. I had a whole bunch of stuff in prison. I had like random. I said, roll a d6 and see who your inmate is to your right, and then they'd have a little conversation with that, and then boom, going back to the paladin and cleric. So it's just kind of like I would do that and keep going around, and then as they keep changing, like the barbarian went to join the paladin and cleric, so now that's one pocket. The brother went to go see his brother in prison. That's one pocket. So then now it just
Right.
keeps. I make sure I keep going back and forth, even if it's something minuscule in role play, sure. Even if it's something like, and I also like to leave them on a cliffhanger where they went and the cleric and paladin went to get Milovaj. They got him, it took him to the church and tried to perform a ritual to like talk to him and try to like exercise in the similar type of way. I ran it like a resurrection thing. If you're familiar with Matt Mercer's resurrection
Right.
system, I have my own resurrection system that's very similar to that, but I've tweaked some numbers on it. They basically did that and see if they could talk to Milovaj, and that would be wild and crazy if they could talk to him for a second before he like passes back out. It failed and it didn't work well. But what I did in this split party setup is I'm like, all right, cool. This is what's going to be. I set the stage. Each of you are going to provide an offering to be able to do whatever. I'll leave you alone. Let y'all sit with that. So I think a huge thing is to anytime there's going to be player thought and a bunch of player like, ooh, what do I do here? Stop, next group. And I leave them on that thought nugget to sit on and chew on so that they can
That's a good
think
idea.
about what they're going to do. Then I'm talking role playing. So now not only do they get to sit and simmer on what they're going to do and make a better decision and feel good about it, then now their attention span's not as whittled down like the fuse that is everyone's attention span. They now can watch, and I don't kick them away from the table so they can at least be entertained by what else is happening at the table. And there's some hijinks and stuff, and then they'll laugh at what's going on and like, oh, you talked about me behind my back. So there's all this kind of fun stuff at the table to keep them engaged while they're thinking. So that's kind of my purposeful around the table. I just try and keep people engaged.
That's
Yeah.
no, that's awesome. So
Oh.
in so far through the campaign, uh, what do you feel? And this is another question that comes up a lot. A lot of DMs are concerned. Curse of Strahd
Mhm.
is well known to be a very deadly campaign. In fact, on the Curse of Strahd Discord, they have the March of the Dead. In fact, I had a couple of my players die. Uh, and it always
Yeah,
seems like DMs are, I mean, like daily. I think if you go on there, it's like almost every day a DM is publishing one of their character deaths on there. What is
that's
your
great.
what is your thoughts on the deadliness of the game, and what would you recommend to DMs coming in on how to manage not only the
Yeah.
expectation for the players on how deadly it is, but how do you deal with that?
So I think it's something where my first homebrew campaign, I've had player character deaths before. I have had things across the board, not a ton because I think there's a balance to it, and you don't want to just be this like I'm killing your characters. Don't get attached to them because they're dying, you know. So I think I've done a good job in the big picture trying to evaluate where I'd want of establishing that. But
Right.
with Curse of Strahd, I was like, guys, look, like I'm not holding anything back. This is deadly. I am ratcheting up the death in this thing. Are y'all cool with that? How much do you want to break? Like, and so we had that conversation about like, are y'all okay with this? And like so first of all, I think the first thing would be like talking with the group to make sure you establish like 1 to 10, how deadly do you want this thing to be? You know what I mean? And I asked them 1 to 10, 10 being I am actively trying to kill you, and you probably will have your character die, and you probably will use your other character, and maybe a third one, right? And I even told them, I said, that's probably too much for me. That's not where I want it. A 1 would be like, oh, maybe someone might die, but you can still resurrect them, and it's fine, but you know, whatever, right? And I wanted to give them the full option, and I said, I want like an 8, you know,
Yeah.
and my normal campaigns would be a 5, you know, and they're like, ooh, okay, all right. So they noticed like that's a noticeable increase, and they all kind of landed in that like 7. They're like, no, like let's go. Like they were like it's a challenge, you know, like, and I think that is a huge thing to set the tone for Curse of Strahd before you even
Right.
start playing. Like set the tone there. And then I did run Death House in my version of Death House. Whole that's probably the most amount of homework I've done is fixing Death House. But there's some real close calls in there, and there's some real close calls with the Doru fight in the village of Barovia.
Right.
The cleric almost went down. Like there's a moment where it was literally down to one person's turn, and on the next turn this character's going to full die, and the one character was able, the bard was able to save the cleric with creative use of command spell. But anyway, they've definitely had some close calls, and they know that I will kill them, and they know that that's good, on the table. And in a good example of this whole cleric thing we just talked about, they fully know. They're like, I know that if this happens, gonna die, and I'm fully fine with that happening because this is what my character wants to do. But I think having those extra characters as a fallback also gets across that vibe of death, of that it's
Right.
so deadly you need a backup character, right? And I told them to be vague with the backup characters, super general, like what class is pretty much always like what class and subclass kind of would you be thinking about, right? And then I have that, and just, you know, so I have enough. They have enough to fall back on so that if I do kill them, it's not like oh, now I have no idea what's going on, and now oh no. So
Setting that
it helps me.
expectation. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and actually, I hope my players won't watch this, but the cleric, if they die, their backup character is the paladin, and I have that paladin be from the Argynvost Silver Dragon whole situation. They're going to be a paladin of that, and that's going to be a whole
Well, that's
situation where
cool.
they come in with
Weaving
that, and
back
then
in that storyline into the
right,
campaign.
to help further in the story. And then one of
Yeah.
the players' backup characters is a druid, and they're going to be one of the druids from the tree or whatever, and or the what's the druid group called?
I just called them the Druids.
There you go. So
The Druids of
Yesterhill,
Mr.
they did
Hill.
Gilhillis tree or something, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, Yesterhill. There we go. So
Yeah.
the druids, and one of the characters is a druid, kind of from there. So I've made sure that each of their characters fit into a pocket that could also accelerate the story and not
Right.
just be out of nowhere. So, but yeah, I think making sure that they know it's a thing and you don't pull punches. And I roll in front of the table a lot. I roll in front of the table a
Or
lot when
roll
it comes
open. Yeah.
towards death. Open rolls when it comes towards like, all right, look, this is what's going to be, and I start rolling in front of the table so that they
Fate of
know,
the
like,
dice. Let the dice
yeah,
do.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, then why
So,
are you rolling,
um,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's been another thing I think. So the death rules we talked about, the death save rules really establishes that talking with your players and not pulling punches, rolling openly, and letting the dice like, all right, yeah, this is done. So yeah, it's been really
I
cool.
think that also puts the process into the player's mind that retreat is an option, that there might be an alternative way to get around this problem instead of trying to
100%.
be a murder hobo. I find
Yeah.
I've played in a couple of games where I notice other players are just full murder hobos all the time because in that particular game I was playing in, death was almost not an option, right?
Yeah.
So when
Mhm.
you set that mentality in the players where decisions don't have consequences, then players tend to never back down, right? It's like, well, I'm not
Right.
going to die, so I just might as well just keep on
Mm-hmm.
throttling, on there.
For sure.
Where in Curse of Strahd, when you throttle up that threat, the players have to make a conscious choice. Do I want to face this? Because
Yeah.
I could die. Choices
Ooh.
have consequences.
Well, and you tapped on something too I think is important is I introduced Strahd right when they got out of Death House. So when
Right.
they came out of Death House, boom, Strahd, and I wanted to like they need to be in front of something that they should not, will not, and if they did, die. I think
Right.
and if they did anything of us, if they acted wrong, said anything, in fact, I had an NPC, a DMPC, be a part of the party, going all the way through Death House, and I was trying to kill that little NPC the whole time, just to try and get across the whole thing. But I had it pre-written where if they came out and he was still alive, Strahd was just going to kill him. So
How did
yeah,
Strahd
just
kill
straight
him?
up
How did
off.
you have Strahd kill him?
So Strahd came out and the whole thing, he like welcomed the whole party and everything, and he said, "Which one of you is the leader? Like, which one of you is the leader of this group?" And so then they all kind of pointed to Finian, the cleric, and so he's like, "Come with me." So he walks away. He's like, "Which one of them should I kill? Which one of them is holding you back?" And he's like, "Wait, what? No, 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 no. No one's gonna." So he basically had Strahd tell him, "I'm gonna kill one of them. Which one?" And he's like, no, no. He's like, you are the leader. And so that he had like this whole thing. And he's like, I'm not gonna say it. He's like, if you don't, then I will choose. And he's like, no, but and so then he like knocks the cleric unconscious and then walks to the rest of the group and grabs the sniveling little NPC that I had purposely the
Oh
worst and the
man.
weakest and stuff. So it made sense that Strahd picked him because he values strength and he values power and all these things. So he walked up to the side of the death house, like there he was like backed up against the death house. He picked him up. He like did the whole like anime vampire bat like rush up to him in this like swoosh of black as the kind of skittering of bats went through, as this like super quick like blur of a move, and then he grabbed him by the throat, lifted him up, and like held him up against the thing, turned around, talked to the players about how you need to be decisive and who is your leader, this all this kind of stuff. If you're going to survive here, you got to be able to survive. And then he just bang 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 like bashes this little NPC into the wall multiple times and then lets him go. He slides down the wall, hits it, and I did this little prestidigitation of blood where he pulls and like magically pulls the blood up and off of this character into this coagulated ball that floats there as he breathes it in and
Oh
drinks in the
man.
blood, cleans up everything, turns around, and and then he goes, no one chooses, so now you will. And then I made them perform, and they had to do like a act of strength in some way, and he was going to kill whoever was the weakest of all of them. And so then it was a whole mini skill challenge where each of them had to show like what they were capable of and prove themselves to Strahd. So I'm really trying to set the tone of like he's evaluating you all, and the
Holy
person
sh-
who rolled the lowest was the paladin. And what was interesting though is nobody cast magic. Nobody cast magic. That the cleric and the paladin did not reveal that they were magical in any way, but the paladin starts to go for it. And whenever they made their check, they rolled a natural one, and I was like, oh man. The worst thing happens, right? So is I thought if they Strahd wouldn't be scared by a level one cleric and paladin, or
No,
like a level
no.
three, I guess they were at this time. No, they're no big deal. And then but with a natural one, my interpretation of the role play there would be he like, how dare you like cast this holy magic in my presence? Like, so he like rushed over, grabbed him by the like he was trying to cast a smite on his sword and like put magic into his sword. He grabs the paladin's forearm and breaks and like pull like dislocates his shoulder and like partially breaks his arm. And then like the paladin's like back on the ground. And I was gonna do like a death blow thing where I was gonna like get him down to one. He's being death saves, and they'd have to try and get back to the village and try and do something. And there'd be a sliver of a chance to kind of help stabilize and stop the death. But the paladin, in a really cool moment of role play, as his arms broken and dislocated on the ground over Strahd, he said, "The light from Belanos will shine." Like he like talked shit back to Strahd. and was like, no, like my like Belanos is the Lord of Light in the whole situation. So like they're the deity that they serve, like their light will shine in this dark land. You will and like I was like, whoa. And I have written as one of Strahd's key things is respecting like courage and
Right.
like confidence and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, oh, wow. And so he didn't kill him purely from that reason alone. Now, he still had a broken arm, still had to deal with that, and they had to heal it over the course of time. But that's where I left the party on in their introduction to Strahd. So that definitely made them feel very small
Oh
in the
wow.
presence of such power. So yeah.
That's I mean, what was flashing in my mind when you were talking about that at the beginning, where like who's the weakest one, it was that that scene from The Walking Dead with Negan
Oh yes, yes. Oh, I
with
love that. Yeah,
Lucille
100%.
with
Yeah, I
Lucille.
never made that connection.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, that's probably one of the
yeah,
most horrific things I've
exactly.
ever seen on TV.
Ooh, oh, yeah. So, but like that, I wanted to get
Strahd pulled a
across like
Negan on him.
exactly, exactly. But like, and also I wanted to show his values, like Strahd's value system.
Right.
Like, he's not just a murderer. He's like, who's the weakest one? Who's holding the group back the most? You? All right, dead. Let's keep going.
So that brings something up. You mentioned that he was healing over time. Do you run any lingering injury tables, or how does that work?
So, I did have, and why the arm was broken, also, by the way, it wasn't my choice. It was, I have a lingering injuries table in Alkander's Almanac. I believe lingering injuries is one of the things that's done the worst, if done. I don't like lingering injury tables in general. I have put a lot of work to create the lingering injury table I have of the full spectrum of possible injuries. You roll a d20. If you get a lingering injury, it's a whole nother conversation how that happens. But with this Strahd situation, he was going to put a lingering injury on this person, right, and then maybe do the whole death thing. But they talked themselves out of that. So I had the paladin roll a d20 for the lingering injury table. It's a d20 table.
Right.
20 is actually no lingering injury at all. There's like a cool little flavor moment of like an adrenaline rush and stuff. And then there's just your classic little injuries. But the bottom section, I believe, is leg, arm, and eye, which is like you lose or break. Lose or break. So it's a choice by the player receiving it. I think that's one of the things with lingering injuries that's bad is if you rip someone's arm off, that's player agency and like the safety of their own body and stuff. It feels weird if your character gets mutilated in some way, and it's like, oh, now do they want to play a character like I don't know, so I don't want to violate that.
Right.
So I have it be a choice. So then when they rolled on the lingering injuries table, they got a 2, and they're like, oh man. So they rolled a 1, then a 2. So I went over to the player, I whispered to him, I was like, you rolled a lose an arm or break your arm, which one do you want? And they're like,
Break.
gives the they're like, why would I choose the other one? I was like, I'm just giving you a choice. I'm just giving you a choice. If myself personally, rip my arm off. Like, let's go. Like
Yeah.
this is
Make
where
some
it's
fun
going.
role
Like,
playing. Right.
yeah, let's have it. And then it would be now my job as the dungeon master to create an opportunity for how maybe the witches could be able to grow it
Put a
back and
skeleton
whatever.
arm on it
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah, yeah. There's so many different cool
Undead
things I could have
arm.
thought of.
It's got
Strahd
its
would
own
grant him an
will.
undead arm. Oh no. So with that, they said break, so then that's why their arm broke. And then over time, through efforts and rolls applied towards it, they, built up. Yeah. So that's kind of how they healed it over time. But yeah.
Now, Kender's Almanac is available on Drive Through RPG
My website.
on your website.
No, 100% on my website, the Dungeon Coach, thedungeoncoach.com. Alkander's Almanac. It's a 200 plus pages of rules, just like little snippets that keep coming up here. But it's just different little tweaks to the game.
I'll put a link
Example
down
of,
at the bottom.
appreciate it, appreciate it. So
Well,
yeah,
you can
that's,
see it's on the video right here down below.
oh
So
yeah, 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 yeah.
you can check that out.
Perfect, perfect.
Well, this has been amazing,
Oh man,
and
I love talking about this.
oh yeah, it's I could talk about Curse of Strahd all day long. I mean,
Oh, for sure.
it's awesome. Now, you can watch your session prep videos. They're available. You also have the YouTube channel, which I highly recommend because you have some great stuff, especially the DC20 stuff that
Appreciate it,
I
appreciate it.
love watching, and the Patreon page as well as stuff on your store as well. And you're doing this like myself full time now, right?
Yeah, yeah. This is now. I just made the jump. This last year, I was a teacher and coach, and so at the end of every school year, I was like, nope, not yet. we're getting closer. Okay, fine. And then make the leap. And right after I make the leap, OGL comes crashing down. And then I'm like,
We both
and
made the leap at the same
so,
time. Yeah, I did it
yeah. So,
January 2023 this year. I made the leap full
yep,
time, and
yep.
OGL kind of
Yeah.
smacked me in the face, and
Like
yeah,
leap, smash. Yeah. So but yeah, so that's how everything's been going and now I'm all in and that's kind of what I say with like this Curse of Strahd binder. I'm putting a lot into this Curse of Strahd binder so that others can benefit from all that time because I
right,
do have the time and the interest and investment in doing this and saw the same problem you saw with
right.
the cluster of things just all over the place to try and help smooth that out like you have helped me smooth things out. So yeah.
When is DC20? When do you expect it to come out? And if can is there early access for Patreon members, or can you give
So
us a little?
yeah, the lifeblood of everything I do and how I'm able to do everything I do, as you know, is Patreon. On there is the Curse Strahd games and the Dungeon Master Binder Curse Strahd and DC20 early access and all of that. So alpha for DC20 is going to release in about a month or two for the upper rewards, just to kind of see that they're going to get feedback and play test it and see what's going on there. And then over time, I'm going to be releasing kind of like one D&D releases. They're like Unearthed Arcana stuff. I'm going to be releasing that on Patreon over time as well. And then eventually, whenever I release the beta, which that I can't necessarily say a timeline on because it kind of depends on how quickly things can go. On the way there. That will be available to all patrons, and then at some point there'll be a Kickstarter for the physical print copy of the book, and then publish it and get art for it and make it all 100% professional game system. And that I plan on. I've never said this out loud before, but I plan on doing that early to mid next year is kind of where that's
Oh,
going to be.
that
So yeah, about a
that
year away.
that's no, that's awesome. I saw Kelsey's Shadow Dark just do.
Oh,
She cranked
explode.
it out. Yeah,
Insane.
yeah. I'm
Yeah.
a
I saw her at Gary Con and I was just congratulating, like, wow, like that was
Yeah, I've bought
accomplishment.
quite a few of her modules on our email list. So
Hmm.
she released Shadow Dark Quick Start. I think I don't know, maybe a year ago. So I was, I've
Oh,
been following that for
yeah.
a while, and I just thought, oh yeah, she'll do pretty well, maybe 100K, 200K. I don't even think I think she was dumbfounded because she had
Oh,
like, oh,
yeah.
10,000 on there. I mean,
Yeah.
she's
Right.
very much like Kevin Crawford, in which they
Hmm.
only focus on their email list. They don't do a lot of I don't think either of them do social media. They just
Yeah.
have an
Yeah.
email list and constantly put out quality content. And I
Hmm.
think she was just blown away by how many
Like
people really.
1.3 million or something.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Crazy.
no, that I'm very excited about her. I'm going to definitely be supporting. I mean, I am supporting DC20 now, but I will
For
definitely
sure.
be signing up for the Kickstarter. Thank you so much for
Like, yeah.
joining me. I'm going to put links
Thanks
to
for
all
bringing
of the
me.
stuff down below where you can get the content, the Patreon, YouTube channel. By the way, the
Appreciate you.
Dungeon Coach is on our Discord server, so you can ping him if you have a question, or
Yeah.
he has his own Discord server as well
Yeah.
on there. But make sure to check all that stuff out. Thank you so much for joining me. It's awesome that you're
I
also in the Curse of Strahd community doing so much stuff for Curse of Strahd. I'm
It's
so
been so
excited.
cool to join the Curse of Strahd community because, and I love talking to you about this. And I hit up just to tell you guys, not Pyre. I hit up Pyram all the time, like, "Oh my God, my players just did this. What's going on? What would you do here?" Because like now Ivan's here and this is that and Isaac is this, but who's Strahd? Oh man! And so Pyram's been my little pocket helper
Oh,
on that as well. So props
no,
to
I
you for that as well.
appreciate that.
And just talking about Curse of Strahd because I can't talk to my friends because
Right,
they're in my campaign. So who else
right.
am I gonna, So I appreciate you for bringing me on. So
Oh no,
heck
no,
yeah.
no problem. I really appreciate it. Hey, well, this is Parm King signing off, and may all your rolls be critically successful. Ciao.